able to share my thoughts with you about the age of Aquarius. So Spirit has a funny way of getting our attention. And for the last couple months, I've just been thinking a lot about the age of Aquarius. And now we have all these planets in the age of Aquarius. And even Sheila was speaking about the age of Aquarius last week. So I think it's just really something that's on all of our minds. And I'm just going to talk to you about it now. So in recent years, the expression age of Aquarius referred to the hippie and New Age movements of the late 1960s and early 1970s, a culture I was raised in. In 1969, the song, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius, was a #1 hit, and it was also sung at the music festival Woodstock that same year. The lyrics go like this, and no, I'm not going to sing them. When the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, then peace will guide the planet and love will steer the stars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Now, as a 12-year-old, I loved this song and thought that the age of Aquarius was really going to magically happen, and that I was going to grow up in a time, as the lyrics promised, of harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding. And growing up in San Francisco in a hippie artist community during that time period, trust me, I got to see my share of free love. However, at the same time, social unrest was everywhere. Martin Luther King had been assassinated, the Vietnam War was raging, and my free-loving hippie friends were angrily disrespecting our Vietnam veterans. So as I grew up, I learned that things just weren't that simple. So what is the dawning of the age of Aquarius? And to put things in context, what age are we coming out of? So first of all, let's talk about what is an age. So in astrology, there are 12 great ages, and they mark the cycle of the Earth's slow but steady wobble on its axis. So we're not on the same axis all the time. It slowly goes back and forth. And this wobble takes approximately 26,000 years to make a full cycle. And that results in each of the 12 constellations of the zodiac appearing over the eastern horizon in the evening during the spring equinox for a period of 2,200 years. So imagine over the course of 2,200 years, each constellation rises over the horizon after the sun goes down. This cycle was visible and known to our ancestors, and they built structures to track this and other changes in the stars. So the great ages move slowly backwards through the zodiac, and we are currently transitioning out of the age of Pisces, the last sign of the 12 great ages, to the age of Aquarius, beginning a new 26,000 year cycle. These divisions between the astrological cycles, or the great ages, are not exact, however, and seem to overlap at times. So while astronomers calculate that the constellation of Aquarius will be appearing over the eastern horizon in another 100 years, astrologers feel that there are many metaphoric signs that we have already entered into the Aquarian age. So I'm going to give you a little background. So let's go back about 11,000 years when our planet was experiencing global warming and the glaciers were beginning to thaw. At that time, humans coexisted with the natural world as nomadic hunter-gatherers who used simple stone tools and were wild in the best sense of the word. They were completely engaged in the wilderness. We were much more in tune with the environment in the same instinctual way that animals are. Some anthropologists go so far as to speculate that humans back then communicated not so much with words, but telepathically, like the Australian Aboriginals, African Bushmen, and other indigenous people still do today. Humans had a connection with the spirit realm as a matter of survival. So I'd like to point out here that this connection is also referred to as shamanism, one of the oldest forms of spirituality and mediumship. So now let's take a quick look at the great ages from that time period until now and their astrological significance. So the age of Cancer started about 11,000 years ago at the time when the glaciers were beginning to thaw and lasted for about 2,200 years. Now, Cancer represents matriarchy, the mother, nurturing, family, settled life, and farming. So as the glaciers receded, humans evolved beyond coexisting with nature as hunter-gatherers. We ceased our nomadic lifestyle and started to build houses and settlements and began manipulating nature in the form of farming. It was a matriarchal society, meaning women were in charge, and figurines of a voluptuous mother goddess from this age have been found all over Europe and Asia. Humans maintained a strong connection with the spirit realm and continued to rely on intuition and instincts. After that came the age of the Gemini, the twins, and that was about 8,600 years ago, and again lasted for 2,200 years. The sign of Gemini represents logic, reason, intellect, communication, trade, and networking. So the matriarchal settlements grew larger, and cultures based on exchange of goods and information appeared. Humans developed writing, and our first written records date from that time period. As the reasoning and logic ability of humans became more pronounced, our collective psychic abilities began to diminish. And then came the age of Taurus, the bull, where the constellation of Taurus appeared over the eastern horizon at the spring equinox about 6,400 years ago, and again stayed there for 2,200 years. Now, Taurus represents the material world and the enjoyment of the five physical senses. And also, both the age of Gemini and the age of Taurus are referred to as the Bronze Age. So matriarchy continued to be the guiding force, but toward the end of this age, it slowly began to be replaced by patriarchy. Skills including clay pot making, weaving, and bronze metalwork were developed and refined. Settlements became cities, supported by continual improvements in agricultural methods, and massive structures were built, including pyramids and mounds all around the planet. With advanced knowledge and understanding of the material world, human manipulation and outright domination of nature became the norm, while we collectively lost our ability to perceive the spiritual realm. It's also interesting to note that in the age of Taurus, the bull and the cow worshiping cults began to form in many places around the world, including India, Assyria, Egypt, and Crete. So when Moses descended from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, some of his people were worshiping a golden male calf. He instructed those worshipers to be killed and the golden calf destroyed. This represents Moses killing the bull and ending the age of Taurus. Now, I just want you all to keep in mind that we are looking at these ages from an astrological, symbolic perspective and not a literal one. So just kind of interesting to see how the ages and what they represent were reflected in the development of human beings. So after that came the age of Aries, the ram, which started about 4,000 years ago. And Aries represents patriarchy, masculinity, war, and the martial arts. And in fact, the word martial comes from the word Mars. The age of Aries was also known as the Iron Age, and it was the time of Abraham and Moses, the Old Testament, and Judaism. It was also the time of the law, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Patriarchy, men being in charge, replaced matriarchy as engineering, mathematics, and logic developed, and iron was worked into swords, replacing the bronze swords of the previous age of Taurus. Iron weapons gave rise to great military cultures, including the Egyptians, the Jews, Persians, Greeks, and the Romans. And the history from the age of Aries gave us stories of mighty male heroes, among them Abraham, Moses, Spartacus, and Alexander the Great. It's also interesting to note that many of these cultures worshiped the ram or used sheep as a religious sacrifice. So when Jesus, the Lamb of God, was sacrificed on the cross, it indicated the symbolic end of the age of Aries and the beginning of the age of Pisces, the age that we're transitioning out of now. So the age of Pisces started about 2,000 years ago at the time of Jesus's birth, and it'll officially end in about 100 years from now. So Pisces represents compassion, sacrifice for an ideal or for others, emotion over logic, and duality. It was the time of Jesus, the New Testament, and Christianity, and also the Golden Rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. At the same time, Christianity was forming and Judaism was popular. There was another philosophical way of looking at the world called Gnosticism, from which the Western mystery traditions such as the Kabbalah and Freemasonry evolved. Gnosis means knowledge, and the word knowledge comes from the word gnosis. And it arose out of Judaism and Christianity. Gnosticism is a collection of religious ideas and methods that emphasize personal spiritual knowledge over the orthodox teachings, traditions, and authority of the Christian Church. Most Gnostic texts deal not with the dual concepts of sin and repentance, but more with the dual concepts of illusion and enlightenment. An example of Gnostic writings is the Gospel of Thomas, which is not included in most Bibles. Sad to say, by the 2nd century, the church fathers denounced this way of thinking as heresy, and it went underground to avoid persecution. This religious persecution eventually became the Great Inquisition. Now let's get back to Jesus. Jesus had the temperament and many of the personality traits of a Pisces. Moreover, the 12 apostles were called fishers of men. The code word for Jesus was the Greek word for fish, ichthys. So the image associated with Pisces is two fish swimming in opposite directions, the duality this sign represents. Examples of this duality are female and male, light and dark, right and wrong, us and them, separation. The age of Pisces was an age of suffering and martyrdom, another Pisces characteristic, yet also introduced compassion, turning the other cheek, and kindness rather than cruelty. It represented rigid orthodoxy, severe political institutions, and genocide as well. Those living in this age came under the hammer of rigid orthodox and political agendas, and individuals who stepped outside of sanctioned ways of thought and behavior were ridiculed, ostracized, imprisoned, or even worse, tortured and killed. This is one of the darker legacies of the age of Pisces. Religious persecution led to the Puritans of England boarding the Mayflower and setting sail for the New World. Their arrival led to the genocide of the indigenous people they found here and the destruction of their so-called primitive nature-oriented cultures. Eventually, our founding fathers, most of who were Freemasons, formed the constitution and government of what is arguably the greatest democracy the world has known, our United States of America. So the age of Pisces was not only about compassion, selfless service, but it was also represented fear, intolerance, and prejudice based on emotion. In much the same way, the age of Aquarius is not going to consist solely of noble humanitarianism. It will also include its share of unpredictable dysfunction in our leadership and institutions. And it will be up to us as individuals and collectively to choose which path we take as we enter fully into the age of Aquarius. So now, after sharing all of that with you, I think you have a better picture of what the age of Aquarius is in relationship to the big picture. So now, at the age of Aquarius, we're in the dawning of the age of Aquarius. It's just slowly starting to happen, but the constellation is not yet in place to make it official. So Aquarius represents reason, electricity, science, technology, humanism, interconnectedness, and eccentricity. As the constellation of Aquarius began dawning on the spring equinox, it's not fully there yet, 200 years ago, the world has in many places become industrialized and now highly technological. Not surprising, since Aquarius rules science. So the positive aspect of Aquarius regarding science is used to give us the freedom to enjoy our individuality and pursue spiritual growth rather than toil endlessly for survival. Now, the shadow side of Aquarius regarding science is science being used destructively. For example, nuclear weapons, industries that pollute the environment, the list goes on. And it also represents the prevailing materialist science view that humans are just machines, consciousness is a product of the brain, and there is no purpose for our existence. However, On the positive side of things, quantum physics has proven the spiritual nature of reality and the interconnectedness of all things. So you've got the duality in Aquarius around science, positive and negative, and it's our choice which direction we take. And I personally believe that as the age of Aquarius progresses, slowly but surely, we will reestablish our connection with the intelligence of the universe via our innate intuitive psychic senses. I mean, we're spiritualists and we're drawn to this. And I think that's definitely a sign that we're entering the age of Aquarius. And in his recent talk a couple weeks ago, our brother James Bay quoted a diary entry by one of the founders of modern spiritualism, Andrew Jackson Davis, on March 31st, 1848. He wrote, "About daylight this morning, a warm breath passed over my face, and I heard a voice, tender and strong, saying, 'Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born.'" And he was referring to the spirit of Charles Rosna communicating with the Fox sisters, and that had just happened hundreds of miles away. So he got a telepathic message. We're moving into that. He got a message letting people know that the communication between humans and the spirit world was beginning, and this was the beginning of our modern spiritualism, which is a reawakening of humanity's latent abilities to perceive the spirit realm. So again, in my mind, these are very clear signs that we have entered the age of Aquarius. So this age also brings an expectation of entering into a period of group consciousness. So let's fast forward to Theosophist Alice Bailey in the early 20th century, and she coined the term New Age in reference to the age of Aquarius. She predicted a time when humanity would experience a sense of unity with all and prioritize the group over the individual. And in 1945, at the end of World War II, she channeled the Great Invocation, which is about restoring the plan of love and light on Earth by reconnecting the collective mind of humanity with the mind of God. So how can we be a part of restoring the plan of love and light on Earth? Something to think about. I feel by realizing that we are all connected and becoming the change we wish to see in the world. If we want a world that is filled with love and light, we must first fill ourselves with love and light. And that's something we work to achieve by coming together on Sundays, by attending mediumship training, and all sorts of spiritual paths that we're drawn to. And also, as Truth mentioned in her talk a few weeks ago, Homo sapien is evolving into Homo empathicus. We as humans are evolving in our consciousness from thinking to feeling, from material to spiritual. The age of Aquarius is about each one of us choosing to prioritize the group over ourselves. Imagine how much real harmony and understanding we can collectively create, one person at a time. So in summary, let's circle back around now to that song, The Age of Aquarius, and what the lyrics were predicting. When the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, then peace will guide the planets and love will steer the stars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And it also goes on to speak about harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding. However, I know from astronomy that Jupiter and Mars actually line up regularly, and yet we're still waiting for something to magically happen. Rather than thinking of those lyrics as a prediction the way I did when I was a child, I now think of them as a metaphoric call to action, a call to us, humanity, to align our inner world of spirit with the outer world, the material world that manifests in response to our thoughts. The age of Aquarius is about becoming the change we wish to see in our world by choosing harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust in our thoughts, words, and deeds. This in turn will have a direct impact on the world around us. So as individuals, if we actively work to integrate the spiritual and material parts of ourselves, then we will collectively enter the age of Aquarius and make it a time when peace will guide the planets and love will steer the stars. Thank you.